We are going to build a countdown timer application using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Let's look at the demo before we get into code. I'm going to select the date, for example, this, and then at this time, and I'll click on Start. As you can see, it is been counting down, and I can pause, cancel, or resume. If I pause, now I can resume, and these buttons are being disabled. And if I resume, as you can see, it is counting, and I can cancel it, and I can start from scratch. If I select past date, now let's see, and we got this warning by saying that please select a future date and time. And if I select something like this, now let's wait while it is counting, and as you can see, countdown finished. And when I refresh it, I can begin a new counter. One cool thing is that this data is being persisted in local storage. For example, if I choose this and then start, and even if I refresh the page, as you can see, the data is being persisted. And if we check our local storage application, local storage, as you can see the date being inside the local storage. And if I cancel it, as you can see, it has been removed from the local storage. And to begin this project, unless you are familiar with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and in case you have enrolled in our full stack course, we have covered them intensively, so let's get into it. The main logic is going to be on the JavaScript. Because of that, I will provide the HTML plus the CSS. So it means that we are going to focus on the JavaScript. So let's look at the structure for the HTML. Here I have linked up the CSS and then the JavaScript also down here. And this is the container. If I collapse, as you can see, this is a countdown container for styling. And inside we have the select date field, which is this, and then the buttons for starting, pause, cancel, resume. And by default, these are disabled. So we are going to use JavaScript to enable it based on conditions. And these are the elements for displaying the values, either in days, hours, minutes, and seconds. So let's get into the JavaScript. Let's make sure that the JavaScript is well connected. I'm going to elect something like hello. And we have hello. So let's begin. The first step is that we want to make sure the HTML and CSS are loaded before the user can interact with the application. So here we're going to use a method called DOM content loaded. So here as document dot add event listener, and we're going to use DOM content loaded and then the callback function as that. And this is where we are going to implement our logics. So first step is that we are going to select the element. And then we're going to have a function for updating the display. And one function to reset the display. And one for starting the countdown. And one for displaying the message. The message will be something like countdown finished. And here we are going to add event listeners to the buttons. And the first button is going to be the start button. So here I have changed the comment color as start. And then we're gonna have one for the pause. Let me add the button here. In case you want to have the same syntax as my comment, then you can install an extension called beta comment. So let's continue. And then one button for resuming. It means that you're going to add event listeners to these buttons. And then you're going to have one for the cancel. And a function to load and auto start the countdown if a saved target exists. So here as change the color to green. So let's begin with the selecting of the element. We're going to select the pause, start, cancel, and resume. So here as const start button. And let's have some initializer here as, let me change the color to this or something like this, as initial values. And here we're going to have the countdown timer by using let as countdown timer. By default, we're going to have undefined as the value and let the end time. Also by default is undefined, and this value is going to be accessible to all relevant functions in our application, likewise this one. So let's create the function to update the display as function update display, and this function, upon calling, we're going to pass in the time. So here we are going to get the days, hours, minutes, and seconds from this time. So here as get, let me change the color to something like this, get days. And it goes like this, const days is equal to math.floor. And then pass in the time and then divide by this, and that is 1000 by 60 by 60 by 24. And we also want to get the hours as get hours. Here remove everything from here, and this is how we're gonna get hours from a time. Bracket and then pass in the time, and then module, then bracket, pass in 1000 by 60 by 60. And then outside this, you're gonna divide by bracket here, and it's going to be as 1000 by 60. We have to multiply by 24. This is for the hours. Now let's have one for the minute. That is get minute. And for minutes, everything remains the same, but here remove the 24, and that is it as minute. And then lastly is going to be the seconds. And to get a seconds, remove 160 here. Last step is that we are going to display these values to the page as that. So here, days, hours, minutes, and seconds. Because of that, we are going to select these values. So here as document dot get element by ID, and the ID here is going to be days. And on that, we're going to use text content, and if I say it is equal to 20, now let's see, let me call the function here as update display, and let's see, as you can see, we have 20 here. So instead of hard coding, we are going to provide the days here. And for this, when I say days, let's see, and we have not a number, because upon calling this, we are not passing in the date. And for this one, we want to use a method called toString and then part start. So let me write the logic and then I'll explain. We're going to use toString, and then use part start, and then pass in 2, and then quote 0 here. Alright, so what does it mean? ToString is a method that we use to convert a number to a string. Well, let me change this one to 2. This one means that the method is used to ensure a string has at least 2 characters in length. And if it doesn't, we're going to add 0 to it. For this one, we don't want to see something like 1 second. But instead, we want to add 0 at the beginning in case we have one value at 01. So it means that if the string is not up to 2, then we're going to add 0 at the end. That's all what it is doing over here. So I can remove this. The next one is going to be the hours. So copy and paste, change this one to hours, and change the value here to hours. And then the next one is going to be the minute. As minute, change this one to minute. And lastly, for seconds. Remember, we have these elements as days, hours, minutes, and seconds. Now let's see, we have them as not a number because we are not calling this function by passing in a date. If I say new date, now let's see. So let me remove this one from here. So let's continue with the reset display button. So here as function reset display. So in here we are going to select the target date, days, hours, minutes, and then reset to 0. So here let me begin with the target date. The target date is going to be this one, which is this. The one the user is going to provide, and that is this one. This is the target date. We want to reset. So here is going to be as document dot get element by ID, and the ID here is target date. And then on that, we're going to use value and set to empty string. The next one is going to be days. Also, let's use 00, and then hours, also 00, and then minute, also 00, and lastly is going to be seconds, also 00. And here we are going to disable the start button element. On that, use disabled, and then for this is going to be false, and then for the pause is going to be true here, and then the resume also true, and lastly cancel also true. Now let's continue with the function to start the countdown as function start countdown. And for this function, we are going to pass in the duration, and either it is being resumed or it is not. So here we're going to have the duration, and then comma is resuming. By default, we will say false. So in here, if it is not resuming, then we are going to update the end time as end time is equal to date dot now, and then we're going to add the duration. And let's also update the countdown timer here. So after this block of code is going to be as this countdown timer is equal to, we're going to use set interval and then pass in a callback function as that. And then the second is going to be 1 second. Alright, so let's implement the logic. Let's have today's date as now, which is equal to date.now. And let's calculate the time left. Const time left is equal to the end time minus now. So in case the time left is less than or equal to 0, then we can clear the interval and also remove the data from local storage and reset the display and buttons function. So here is going to be as this. If time left is less than or equal to 0, then let's continue with the logics. So here we're going to use clear interval, which is this, and then we're going to pass in the countdown timer as that. And let's call the display message, which is, let me see, I'm not sure we have the display message function yet, but we will get there very soon. So let's create the function here as function display. Therefore, we can call the display message here and we will say that countdown finished. And then we're going to use the local storage. So here we're going to clear from the local storage. On that, we have a method called remove item and then pass in the property here as countdown target. For this one, upon saving, we're going to provide this one as a property on the local storage. So next step is that we're going to reset the display buttons as reset and display buttons. And after that, we're going to return from this function. So here we are going to update the display and then pass in the time. And that is the time left. After that, we are going to disable the pause button and also the cancel button. So pause button dot disabled is equal to false. Likewise, the cancel button. So let's work on the display message. For this one, it will take in the message and here we are going to display to the DOM. So I will say that clear the countdown display and show a message. So here as const display is equal to the document dot get element by ID and the ID is called timer dash display. Let me show you in the HTML, which is countdown timer dot display, this one. Yeah. So let's continue. On that, we're gonna use dot text content, which is equal to the message. So let's begin with the starting of the button. So here as start button dot add event listener, and the event is going to be click event, then the function as that. So here we are going to assign the value from the target date to what is called target date value. So here as const target date value, which is equal to document dot get element by ID, and the ID here is called target dash date, and we want the value. So we're going to check if the target date value, in case we have it, then it's going to be as target date is equal to new date, and then we're going to pass in the target date value, and let's get the current date as const now is equal to new date. So here we're gonna check if the target date is more than the current date. As if target date is more than now, then here we're gonna get the duration as const duration is equal to target date minus now. This one gives us the duration. Here we are going to save the target date into local storage by using local storage dot set item. And the property here, we are going to use what is called countdown target. The one we specified over here upon removing, as you can see, we provided the countdown target, and this is where we are setting the property. And the value is going to be the target date dot to string. We want to convert everything to string as that. And then we're going to start the countdown and then pass in the duration. Remember, we have the start countdown function here as that, which is this. So let's continue. Let me bring this one after the local storage. Alright, and next step is that we are going to disable the start button and then the resume, and then enable the pause and then the cancel. So here as start button dot disabled is equal to true, and then the pause here is going to be false, and then resume is going to be true, and lastly cancel is going to be false. So after the if here, then you're gonna have else here, and that is alert, please select a future date and time. Then after that, which is after this if block here, we're gonna have else here, and we will say that please select date and time. So let me copy this and then change as please select. We are done with the starting button logic. Next one is going to be the pause. So pause button dot add event listener, and provide click as our event listener, and then the callback function. And here we're gonna call clear interval and then pass in the countdown timer, and then pause button we are going to disable by saying is equal to true, and then the resume button is also false here. And let's create one for the resume, copy and paste, change this one to resume button, and here we are going to remove this by having const duration is equal to end time minus date, and then dot now, supposed to be this instead. Then you're gonna call the start countdown and then pass in the duration, and then true for resuming as true. And then for the resume here, it's gonna be true for the resume, and then for the pause is going to be false. And the other one for the cancel, remove everything from here and then call the clear interval, and then pass in the countdown timer. And also we're going to remove from the local storage as remove item, then pass in the countdown target. And then we're going to call reset display and buttons function as that. So for this one, it's going to reset the display and buttons without setting the text content directly. So now let's load and auto start the countdown. So here as const saved date, we're gonna get it from the local storage as local storage dot get item, and the value here is called countdown target. So in case we have one, and that is if we have saved date, then inside we're gonna have the target as const by passing that one to date to get the actual date. Remember, what we saved into local storage is a string, but we want to work with a date. Therefore, we are going to convert that one back to normal date. So here I will say target date is equal to new date, and then pass in the saved date. And let's get the current date as now is equal to new date. So if the target date is more than the current date, then we're gonna have the duration is equal to target date minus now, and then call start countdown, and then pass in the duration. Then the start button disabled, we will say true, and then pause, we will say false. Likewise, the cancel, we will say false. So else, we are going to remove from the local storage as remove item, and then pass in the property as countdown target, and then call reset and display function. Alright, let's try out. If I select something like this and then start, as you can see, the days, minutes and seconds are working, but for the hours, and it is not even counting down, and if I cancel, it doesn't work. Alright, so let's fix this issue. Let's begin from here, and let's see where we have the possible errors. One is the hours. We have to multiply by 60 again. And for the seconds, we don't have to bring in or multiply by 60. And then we have to use the seconds over here. On the seconds, we are using the minute here. So now, let's see if I try again. As you can see, it is been counting, but the pausing and then the cancel are not working. So let's also fix that. And over here, instead of using value, you're gonna use text content for this one. And then the function name here is supposed to be start countdown. So let me rename by selecting all instances of this function and then rename to start countdown. And let's fix the issue of the buttons. This is the start one, pause, resume, cancel. You have to use cancel here. That is a cancel button. And that is it. So moment of truth. Let me restart. And if I cancel it, as you can see, now it worked. If I start, it says that please select date and time. If I select past date, please select future date and time. And let's open the console and make sure to navigate into application, storage and local storage. If I select a date to keep track of, let's say this, and then start. As you can see, it has been saved in the local storage. If I refresh, as you can see, it has continued from where it left. But as soon as I cancel, it means that I'm removing this one from local storage. So let's do that. And it has been cleared. Awesome, right? So guys, this is how we build this countdown timer application.